13. Most evil black stars. What if you found out that some of the most loved and admired black stars in entertainment were hiding sides of themselves so dark, so shocking, that Hollywood still whispers about them? These weren't harmless scandals or silly mistakes. These were acts so cruel, so twisted, that their charm on camera couldn't cover the damage they caused behind closed doors. Fame protected them for a long time, but the truth always finds a way to crawl back into the light. Here are 13 of the most evil black stars whose dark actions still send chills through Hollywood. 13. Ike Turner. When people talk about the most evil black stars in entertainment history, Ike Turner always shows up near the top because his story is one of raw talent wrapped in years of cruelty. You often hear about his role in early rock and soul music, but what people rarely forget is the storm of violence he unleashed behind closed doors. His charm on stage was completely different from the man Tina Turner lived with, and that sharp contrast makes his story so disturbing. He controlled everything around him through fear, rage, and manipulation, turning their marriage into a nightmare that still shocks people today. His musical genius sometimes made fans overlook what was happening in his personal life, but once the truth came out, there was no way to ignore the destruction he caused. His behavior was not a single mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a long pattern that lasted for years, leaving deep emotional and physical scars. That is exactly why his name landed on this list. He represents how someone can shine brightly in public while hiding some of the darkest actions in private, making his legacy feel permanently stained. 12. XXXTentacion. When XXXTentacion first burst into the spotlight, people were shocked by the raw emotion in his music, but even more shocked by the troubling violence in his real life. His story fits the most evil category because the accusations against him were incredibly disturbing and impossible to ignore. Behind the emotional lyrics and intense performances was a young artist dealing with anger, chaos, and destructive impulses that affected everyone around him. His ex-girlfriend's injuries and statements painted a picture of a person fighting deep demons while causing deep harm. At the same time, his fame grew so quickly that his darker actions followed him everywhere, creating a swirl of controversy that overshadowed his talent. Fans were torn between the music they loved and the violent history they could not push away. His court cases, violent outbursts, and public fights added even more fuel to the fire, making him one of the most complicated and unsettling young stars of his generation. Even after his life ended early, the conversations never stopped because his name remains tied to both musical impact and terrible behavior, turning his story into one of the darkest in modern hip-hop. 11. Nate Parker. Nate Parker's rise in Hollywood looked promising, especially when people expected him to become one of the major voices in black cinema. But the moment his past resurfaced, everything changed, and his name quickly became linked to some of the darkest conversations in the industry. His situation fits the most evil label in this list because the accusations tied to him were so serious that they reshaped how audiences viewed him. Even though he was acquitted in court, the disturbing details surrounding the case created a heavy cloud that followed him everywhere. When he released his passion project about injustice, many people saw the painful irony of his real-life controversy returning just when he was trying to highlight issues of abuse and suffering. This clash made the public uncomfortable and turned him into one of the most divisive figures in modern film. Studios stepped back, supporters pulled away, and his rising star dimmed almost overnight. No matter how talented he was, his story remained trapped inside that dark chapter, and it changed the direction of his career forever. His name on this list reflects how one heavy shadow can redefine a public figure's entire image. 10. New Jack. New Jack, known for his wild presence in the wrestling ring, became one of the most feared and controversial performers the sport ever produced. What makes his story fit the most evil theme is that the violence was never just part of the show. It spilled into real life, becoming a trademark that made people genuinely afraid of him. His matches often crossed the line from entertainment into danger, and he gained a reputation as someone who did not care about consequences when he lost his temper. Many of his in-ring moments became infamous because they involved real injuries, real anger, and real destruction. Fans often wondered whether they were watching a performance or witnessing something far more dangerous. Outside the ring, his history included fights, drug issues, and incidents that added more fuel to the fire. He embraced the chaos around him, and that only made his image darker over time. While some admired his toughness, many others felt unsettled by his unpredictable behavior. His legacy became a mix of cult fascination and genuine fear, making him one of the most troubling figures wrestling has ever seen. 9. Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez entered the music world with confidence, charm, and undeniable talent. But everything changed when the truth about the shooting involving Megan Thee Stallion came out. That moment sent shockwaves through the industry and transformed him from a rising star into one of the most criticized figures in modern music. His place on this most evil list comes from the seriousness of the crime and the way he continued to deny and spin the situation even as evidence stacked up against him. The case revealed a pattern of aggressive behavior that many people had ignored while he enjoyed fame. Once the guilty Bush verdict arrived, the public finally saw the harsh reality behind the persona. The shooting incident became a symbol of how fame and ego can mix with violence, creating long-term consequences for everyone involved. His career, once full of possibilities, collapsed under the weight of his actions. Where fans once saw creativity and bold ambition, they now saw danger, deception, and instability. His story became a warning about how fast things can fall apart when violence becomes part of the narrative. 8. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby's story is one of the most shocking falls from grace in entertainment history. For many years, he was seen as a role model, a symbol of success, and a trusted figure in family television. But once the dark truth about his actions came forward, everything changed. The long list of accusations, the disturbing patterns, and the heartbreaking testimonies destroyed the friendly image he had built over decades. His name landed on this most evil list because the scale and severity of his wrongdoing stunned the entire world. Even though his conviction was later overturned, the damage had already been done. People could not separate the entertainer from the crimes he was associated with. The gap between the public personality and the private behavior was so extreme that it felt like the world had been lied to for years. What made his story even darker was the trust he used to harm his victims, turning his power into something dangerous instead of inspiring. His downfall rewrote his legacy and left behind a story that still makes people uncomfortable. 7. O.J. Simpson. Simpson's life changed from admiration to infamy in a way the world will never forget. He was once celebrated as a superstar athlete and a charismatic entertainer, but his name became tied to one of the most controversial criminal cases in American history. Even after his acquittal, the civil court's decision and the overwhelming public suspicion kept him locked inside a spotlight filled with darkness. His placement on this most evil list comes from the combination of the brutal accusations, the nonstop media storm, and the way his story symbolized a deep divide in society. Years later, he faced another major downfall when he was convicted of armed robbery, confirming for many people that trouble followed him wherever he went. His life became a cycle of headlines, legal battles, and public debates that never truly faded. The contrast between his early success and his later reputation created one of the most unsettling transformations in celebrity history. Instead of being remembered as a sports icon, he became a symbol of scandal, violence, and controversy that overshadowed everything he achieved. 6. Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown's story is one of the sharpest and saddest turns in modern celebrity culture. People first knew him as a funny, talented kid on television, but as he grew older, his life spiraled into a long list of violent incidents, troubling behavior, and unpredictable outbursts. His place on the most evil list comes from the mix of aggression, arrests, and dangerous actions that shocked fans who once saw him as harmless. Over the years, his public appearances became more disturbing, filled with anger, confusion, and chaotic claims that pushed him deeper into controversy. His criminal record includes domestic violence cases that painted a dark picture of the way he handled conflict and relationships. Every time he seemed ready to recover, another violent or destructive moment pulled him further down. His behavior did not just damage his career, it damaged people around him, leaving behind stories of fear and instability. That transformation from child star to volatile adult became one of the most dramatic in Hollywood, proving how fame mixed with inner struggles can turn into something dangerous. Today, his name is tied not to talent, but to a long trail of actions that left a heavy mark on his reputation. 5. C. Murder. C. Murder's name carries weight in hip-hop, but for many people it is not because of his music. It is because of the murder conviction that forever changed how the world views him. His story fits the most evil category because the crime he was connected to was not a moment of confusion or accidental harm. It was a deadly act that ended a young man's life and left a permanent scar on an entire community. Even while he claimed innocence, the evidence used in court told a different story, and the guilty verdict placed him among the most controversial figures in rap history. His violent reputation did not begin with that case. For years, his life included fights, threats, and incidents that made people feel uneasy around him. The tough image he built in music often spilled into real life in ways that hurt others. As time passed, the debate around his guilt never fully died, but the results of the trial created a long-lasting shadow over his career. What could have been a successful path in music turned into one of the darkest stories in the Southern rap scene, filled with pain, danger, and a tragedy that still echoes. 4. Mystical. Mystical once stood out as one of the most powerful voices in Southern rap, but the violent crimes he was charged with tore apart everything he built. His place on the most evil list is tied to the seriousness of his actions, especially the repeated sexual assault cases that shocked the music industry. These were not minor accusations or misunderstandings. They were disturbing, aggressive acts that scarred victims and forever changed how fans looked at him. His sentences in court reflected the level of harm he caused, turning his story from success to disgrace. Even after serving time and being released, he faced new charges that showed the pattern had never truly stopped. That repetition made the public even more disturbed, proving that the danger surrounding him was not an old chapter, but an ongoing reality. Every attempt at a comeback failed because the weight of his actions was too heavy for the industry to overlook. His name became a reminder of how talent can be wasted when someone refuses to change their destructive behavior. Today, he is remembered less for his music and more for the devastating harm he caused through violence and control. 3. Chris Brown. Chris Brown's story is one of the most talked about downfalls in modern pop culture. At the start of his career, people thought he would become one of the biggest stars of his generation. But his violent assault on Rihanna exposed a side of him that changed everything. That incident was not a small mistake or a private fight. It was brutal, shocking, and impossible to forget. and it earned him a place on the most evil list because of the harm he caused and the long pattern of behavior that followed. Even after he apologized publicly, more violent outbursts, fights, and troubling encounters continued to appear over the years. His temper became a trademark that overshadowed his talent, turning every comeback into another reminder of the person he had become outside the studio. While many celebrities face scandal, the severity and repetition of his actions made him one of the most controversial figures in music. The gap between his smooth voice and his violent history created a disturbing contrast that kept him locked in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. His career became a constant struggle between success and the darkness he brought into his personal life. 2. Suge Knight. Suge Knight built his name through power, intimidation, and force, becoming one of the most feared figures in entertainment history. His place on this most evil list is clear because his influence often came from violence, threats, and a willingness to push anyone out of his way. From the earliest days of Death Row Records, stories about his actions followed him everywhere. People described him as someone who controlled others through fear, using his position to create an environment where violence felt normal. His involvement in fights, assaults, and dangerous conflicts created a trail of chaos behind him. Many believed he played a role in major events that shaped hip-hop's darkest chapters, even if he was never convicted for them. His final downfall came when he ran over two men with his truck, killing one of them and landing himself in prison. That moment confirmed what many had feared for years. His choices were not just rumors or exaggerated tales. They were real, deadly, and connected to a long history of destruction. Suge Knight's legacy became a symbol of how power can turn into something dangerous when mixed with aggression. 1. R. Kelly. R. Kelly stands at the top of the most evil list because the depth of his crime shocked the entire world. For years, he hid behind his fame while committing acts that were manipulative, abusive, and predatory. His conviction for trafficking and exploitation revealed a pattern that lasted for decades, affecting many victims whose stories painted one of the darkest pictures in music history. What made his actions so horrifying was the way he used his talent and influence to control young women, trapping them in environments filled with fear and emotional damage. The public had heard rumors for years, but the reality was far worse than anyone imagined. Survivors described situations that were frightening, controlling, and deeply traumatic, turning him from a celebrated artist into a symbol of evil in entertainment. His downfall in court was not just about punishment. It was about exposing a hidden world he built behind closed doors. The contrast between his romantic songs and the terrifying actions he committed created one of the most disturbing legacies in celebrity culture. His story became a reminder of how dangerous someone can become when power and cruelty work together for so long. 13 stars who shone bright in public while walking through pure darkness in private. Their fame, their power, and their influence couldn't hide the chaos they caused forever. The truth always pushes its way out, no matter how deep it's buried. So now, it's your turn to weigh in. Which of these stories shocked you the most? And do you think Hollywood still protects stars like this today? If you want more deep dives into the hidden, messy side of fame, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a new video. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, there's a lot more Hollywood doesn't want you to hear.